Hi, I'm the Wizard of Legacy Lane. I've been making my own yogurt at less than half the cost of store-bought yogurt, both plain and flavored, for over 30 years. Yeah, I'm an old man. Now, for the first time, I'm going to share with you my time-tested methods for
how to make the Wizard's double boiler process thick, smooth, rich, and creamy style homemade yogurt without adding gelatin, pectin, cornstarch, nuclear waste, or used motor oil. But you will need fresh milk. Well, maybe not this fresh, but some recently purchased whole 2%, 1%, or skim milk and a box of instant non-fat dry milk. You'll also need some yogurt starter cultures I call the good bugs, known as Streptococcus thermophilus, Lactobacillus acidophilus, Bifidus, Bulgaricus, and Lactobacillus casei, which you can acquire in some store-bought yogurt containing live cultures or from a jar of your previously made batch of the Wizard's thick, smooth, rich, and creamy style homemade yogurt. Once you have your ingredients together, you'll need the proper yogurt making equipment. To make a 6-quart batch of yogurt, you'll need one 21.5-quart canning pot to hold your double boiler water. 2 of them if you'll be making 12-quart batches. For a 6-quart batch, you'll need a 7.5-quart stew pot to hold your milk in the double boiler. Get 2 if you'll be making 12-quart batches. You'll also need a trivet for the bottom of each of your double boilers in order to separate the bottom of your milk pot from the bottom of your double boiler's water pot.
Unlike other tutorial videos on making yogurt, I advocate using a double boiler to heat the milk for 3 very important reasons. First, scorched milk is the antithesis to a good-tasting batch of homemade yogurt. And unless you use a double boiler for heating your milk, it is extremely easy to scorch your milk while heating it to the required temperature. Using a double boiler makes scorching your milk virtually impossible. Second, by using my double boiler method, you don't have to constantly be stirring your milk while heating it in order to avoid scorching it. This frees you up to perform other tasks while the milk is heating. Tasks like bagging your instant dry milk or filling up your ice chest incubator with hot water. Third, when you use my double boiler method, you don't have to actually check the temperature of your milk because you know that when the water in the double boiler is boiling, the milk has reached the minimum required temperature.
You'll need heavy cups or mugs to hold your stirring spoons and other utensils when they aren't being used so they don't pick up the bad bugs from your less than sterile countertops.
As a maker of homemade yogurt, it is critical that you keep the bad bugs, that is, any environmental bacteria that can contaminate your jars, your lids, your utensils, and your milk, out of your yogurt. One reason that professionally manufactured yogurt is consistently of good quality is that yogurt manufacturers understand that a very clean environment and contempt for bad bugs is fundamental to creating a good quality batch of yogurt. This is why I encourage you to always endeavor to keep your yogurt making utensils free from contact with bad bug-infested countertops, and that you also wash your jars and lids in a dishwasher, if you have one, being careful not to touch the insides of your jars or lids after they've been washed. Don't be careless. Don't let all your effort at making a great batch of yogurt be compromised by the introduction of bad bugs into your yogurt making process.
You'll also need at least 2 long-handled basting spoons for stirring the milk while it's in the double boiler or after it's removed from the double boiler to cool down before adding the yogurt starter's good bugs. You'll need some locking handles for safely lifting the milk pots into and out of your double boiler, as well as into the sink for the milk cool down process. These can be easily made from the wire handles included with a new canning pot's jar cradle. Just remove them from the jar cradle and bend the ends outward as shown here. You'll need a good quality food thermometer for determining when the milk is hot enough to remove from the double boiler and cool enough for adding the good bugs from your yogurt starter. You'll need the proverbial measuring cup, and you may want to purchase this optional thermospoon that clearly marks when the milk has cooled to the safe zone of 115 to 110 degrees necessary for adding the good bugs from your yogurt starter. I say optional because you can also use your good quality food thermometer to accomplish the same task. I also recommend some inexpensive food storage bags. You'll see why later in this video. Oh, and don't forget to get a number 10 can. You probably buy your coffee in one of these. You're also going to need 6 to 12 one-quart glass jars with lids to hold your yogurt. I've been using these old jam jars for over 20 years, but if you don't have some of these lying around, you can purchase some canning jars. I recommend wide-mouth jars. You'll see why later in this video. You'll need a good-sized ice chest that will serve as your incubator. I use a 70-quart ice chest I've had for years, but for 12-quart or less batches, this Coleman 48-quart ice chest or something similar should work just fine. Oh, and don't forget a boatload of old towels or several blankets. You'll see why later. Okay, let's get started. First, fill up the water pots for your double boilers to about this point in the pots. Then take a trivet and place it into the bottom of the 1 or 2 water pots you'll be using and turn the heat on to high. While the water is coming to a boil, you can use this time to put the hottest water your water heater generates into the ice chest that will serve as your yogurt incubator. You'll want to start out with about 2 inches of hot water in the ice chest. I use this drain plug as a reference point for when I've filled my 70-quart ice chest to the 2-inch level. Next, move your ice chest to the place where it can stay without movement during the entire incubation period. Put a food storage bag into your number 10 can. Put 4 cups of instant, non-fat dry milk into the bag and tie off the bag. Do this for each 6-quart batch you will be making.
Here's a tip. If you use 1% or skim milk for making your yogurt, and you still want a thicker yogurt, try adding 5 or 6 cups of powdered milk instead of just 4. On the other hand, if you prefer a less thick yogurt, whether using 2% or whole milk, you can achieve this result by adding only 2 or 3 cups of powdered milk.
As you can see here, I use another number 10 can lined with a food storage bag in which to store my instant milk, reasoning it will stay fresher that way than keeping it in the opened box in which it was sold. With your 4 cups of instant milk bagged up, now pour 1 gallon followed by an additional 4 cups, or in other words another quart, of milk into your double boiler's milk pot for each 6-quart batch of yogurt you'll be making. Lock your pot lifting handles into your milk pot's side handles to ensure that you can safely lower your milk pot into the double boiler water. Of course, if you're making a 12-quart batch, you'll have to do this twice. I place a butter knife I'll be using later to mix the yogurt starter, and my thermospoon into the double boiler to ensure they're bad bug-free when I use them later. If you're not going to be buying a thermospoon, but will be using a food thermometer to check the temperature of your milk, you'll also want that to be as bad bug-free as possible. So you may want to fashion a wire holder similar to this one, so you can suspend your food thermometer inside your double boiler to sanitize it. Later, after it's been boiling in the water for at least a minute, remove it from the double boiler and place it on a clean, new paper towel to cool down for your use later on. Do the same with your thermospoon if you'll be using one, and the butter knife you'll be using later to stir your yogurt starter mixture of good bugs. I'm about to stir my bags of instant milk into the heating milk. Notice how when I lift the lid on the milk pot, I'm careful to ensure that any water from condensing steam that has accumulated on the milk pot lid is dumped into the water pot of the double boiler and not into the milk pot. Now you can stir into the heating milk your bag of instant milk. Go back and stir your heating milk about every 4 to 5 minutes until the water in the double boiler has come to a full boil. Eventually, the water in the pot is going to come to a full boil. And it's when that happens that the milk in the pot has reached at least 180 degrees. Normally, I don't check the milk temperature with a food thermometer at this point, but I'm doing so for this video to show you that when the water is boiling, the milk has reached or surpassed the minimum 180 degrees. When the milk gets that hot, a reaction takes place within the milk, and the proteins in the milk are reconfigured so that the good bugs in your starter can turn it into yogurt during the incubation period. I recommend stirring the heating milk about every 4 to 5 minutes. When I do that, I make sure to turn the heat down before I open up the milk pot to stir the milk. Otherwise, the boiling water may jump into the milk pot. Notice again how I make sure the top of the lid drains into the water pot. Don't put your stirring spoon down on the counter where it could pick up some bad bugs. Instead, put it in your nearby dishwasher-washed cup or mug. After doing a periodic stirring of the milk, replace the pot covers. And turn the heat back up to high. Once the water has boiled in the double boiler, it's then a good time to fill your kitchen sinks up with about 2 to 3 inches of cold water. Lock your pot handles through the side handles of the milk pot and transfer it into the cold sink water. Notice how I skewed the lids to allow heat to escape from the cooling milk? Only do this after the water is turned off, since you don't want any bad bug sink water splattering into your milk. After about 5 minutes of cooling in the sink water, remove the pot lids, being careful to dump any water on the lids into the sink and not into the milk, and stir the milk to help dissipate the heat. Don't lay your stirring spoon on the countertop, but put it into a dishwasher clean cup or mug. While your milk is cooling, this is a good time to make your starter mixture of good bugs. You can use any plain yogurt with live bugs, but my favorite is Green Mountain Creamery brand Greek yogurt that contains all these live cultures: Lactobacillus bulgaricus, Streptococcus thermophilus, Lactobacillus acidophilus, bifidus, and Lactobacillus casei. For each 6-quart batch of yogurt, Start by pouring about 2 to 3 cups of milk into a quart jar, followed by the addition of 4 heaping tablespoons of the plain store-bought yogurt for your starter, or 4 heaping tablespoons of your previous batch of homemade yogurt.
Here's an important tip to remember if you're thinking of using a previous batch of your homemade yogurt for making your yogurt starter for a new batch. If the batch of homemade yogurt you'll be using isn't absolutely perfect in its creamy texture and its flavor, or if it has a snot-like consistency, don't use it for your new starter, since it might have been contaminated with bad bugs. Using imperfect yogurt for your starter is like making a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. In other words, your newest batch of yogurt will be even worse than the last batch and get progressively worse each time you use some of the preceding batch to make your starter.
Use your boiled butter knife to stir up your starter in the milk. Cap it and shake vigorously. With your starter made, if you're impatient like me and want your milk to cool even quicker so you can add your starter to it, after about 10 minutes of cooling in the sink water, remove the milk pots from the sink, drain the water, and refill the sink with more cold water. Put the milk pots into the new cooling water. Stir the milk again to help dissipate the heat. After an additional 5 to 10 minutes, it will be time to test the milk temperature to see if it's cool enough to add the good bugs in your yogurt starter. I'm using my thermospoon that I've been careful to keep bad bug free, with its marked safe zone of 115 to 110 degrees that shows when it's all right to add my starter mixture. But you can use any good quality food thermometer that you've been careful to keep bad bug free to determine when your milk has cooled to 115 to 110 degrees. Here I can see that the milk is now less than 115 degrees. With the milk cooled to the proper maximum temperature, remove it from the cooling bath. Next, stir in your starter mixture for about 60 seconds. With the starter mixture stirred into the milk, now's the time to pour the cultured milk into your incubation jars. Did you notice that the first jar that I'm pouring into is the same jar which previously held my starter mixture? Pouring the milk into these old jars of mine with their relatively narrow openings show why I recommended wide mouth jars at the beginning of this video. As a prerequisite for putting your filled jars into your ice chest incubator, you must check the temperature of the hot water. This 105 degrees is too hot for incubating a good textured yogurt, but I know it will cool down once I add my jars of ready-to-be incubated milk to the ice chest. Load your milk-filled jars into the ice chest incubator. But wait! Before you close the lid, check the water temperature again and adjust it to 102 degrees if necessary by stirring in hot or cold water into the ice chest. In adjusting the water temperature, keep in mind that it may become necessary to remove some of the water in the ice chest to keep the water level just below the level of the jar lids. Now, since your yogurt is going to incubate for several hours, to enhance the heat-retaining properties of the ice chest, I cover my ice chest incubator with many layers of some old towels. If you don't have a bunch of old discarded towels, you can also use blankets to accomplish the same task. To really keep the incubating heat inside your ice chest incubator, I recommend adding a cat to the top. I incubate my yogurt for 7 hours because I like the thicker consistency and tartness achieved after that amount of time. Keep in mind that you can incubate it for less time, but you must incubate it long enough so that when you tip a jar you can see the solidified yogurt pulling away from the side of the jar. I wouldn't recommend an incubation time of less than 5 hours. Next, put your finished yogurt in the refrigerator to cool down for at least 12 hours. "12 hours or more later, I'm ready to have some of my fresh homemade yogurt on top of my apple craisins and cinnamon oatmeal sweetened with brown sugar. Here you can see the promised thick and creamy texture achieved by using the methodology I've shown you in this tutorial video. Now for a taste. Orgasmic.